Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to ImmaLetYouFinish listeners, you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/ImmaLetYou, ImmaLetYou. That's betterhelp.com/ImmaLetYou, ImmaLetYou. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
What's up, everybody? It's ImmaLetYouFinish on the Pantheon Podcast Network with your host, Court and Amy. Amy, you're back.
I am back. And you're black. There, we've solved that problem.
Boom, and there you go.
And we're done.
In case you were wondering.
Nothing really has changed in the past 2.5 weeks. He's still black. I'm still, what am I? I'm still there.
How was your European vacation?
It's fabulous.
Yeah,
it was really fun. I would have stayed longer. Beautiful, beautiful places that I went to. Traveling with friends, which is always really nice. Basically ate my weight in baklava,
nice.
Which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really nice. It's always good to, first time on a plane in 3 years, and it was not as traumatic as I thought it was going to be.
Right.
That said, on a bus in Albania, there was a Roma woman sitting behind me. I think she put a curse on me. I'm not quite sure.
Mm-hmm.
I know they were talking about me because my friend, who does not speak Roma, but does speak Albanian, and heard them at one point, her boyfriend ask whether I was Albanian. Mm-hmm. So I did COVID test as soon as I got into the hotel because I think she put a curse on me. But other than
you
that,
did say that. You were like she was coughing and something got
She
weird.
was coughing like she had tuberculosis. Not coughing. It wasn't like a it was a full out And how are you? You had the Rona, right?
Yeah, fun fact. It's like, here I am, minding my own business, being America's Next Top Model 2.5 season winner that didn't air, but that's a whole other story because I told Tyra her wig was ugly.
Were you
right,
Shandy?
You know what I mean? And,
she was my favorite.
Oh my God, you did not just remember Shandy. Anyway.
She was in the hot tub with Wu-Tang Clan.
Right. And so then I'm like, one morning I wake up and I'm like, God, I feel like I'm 900 pounds. Like, I thought I had a head cold. I was like, what the fuck? So, because like you, I have 786,000 COVID tests in the house. I took one in the morning. It was negative. I took one in the evening. It was negative. But I just did not feel well. I woke up the next Monday and, I felt like I had a cold. And I was like, all right, well, let me just take this test because I have things I need to do today. I'm going shopping. So I did a little test. And almost immediately, how it's like, wait, 15 minutes, da-da-da-da-da. I put everything in, did the drops. I turned my head, and 2 red lines were already there. And I kept looking at it, and I was like, oh, this test it's broken. It's like, let me grab another one. Clearly, it's fucked up. Did a second one, and the 2 red lines came so fast, I didn't even have to put the drops in there. That's how fast they came. And I was fully gagged, like, holy shit.
Well,
I spent almost 3 years trying to avoid this shit.
You're good now, though. That's the important thing, right?
And here's the thing. You're holding it down for us now. We were the team.
Don't jinx it. Please do not fucking jinx it. Because as soon as it's like lighting a cigarette to make the train come. Do not.
You know what? You want to know what's really funny? I had a doctor's appointment the Wednesday, June 1st. And I was sitting there with the nurse, I'm doing all my blood pressure stuff and all the vitals. Because, it's like birthday time. So it's time for all the physicals and everything. And I was like, she hadn't gotten it either. And I was like, I haven't gotten it. And I'm doing this whole speech about how I didn't want it, how I avoided it, and literally was exposed that night.
Bitch.
That night.
All right. If I can shift gears, let's talk about something else we've been exposed to. Mm-hmm. Drake's new record.
Okay. So honestly, never mind.
Which is not you saying, honestly, never mind, I don't care about this record. That's the title of the record. And like in true fashion, surprise drop, whatever.
And it's in tribute to Virgil Abloh, his friend. So that's the inspiration behind this record. Now, here's... No, because I do have an appreciation for artists doing their artist record. We always talk about that. That's not usually going to be the most popular in your oeuvre when you just make the record you want to make despite your fans. So I'm going to give him a round of applause for saying, yes, I'm making an artist record. This is what I want to do. I'm not known for this. And I will give him a round of applause for actually going to dance producers to make.
I thought his regular producers also worked on this. He's got that one guy that he's worked with. He worked with other people.
But really, he kind of really went in with Gordo and
expanded
Black Coffee. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that for that, I'm going to say, okay, I like that you took a chance. There are some tracks on this album that really bump, that have, because he worked with dance producers,
right?
They know how to make that sort of drama that you need in a house music track, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think everybody can agree that, Text Go Green is a really good track. Falling Back is a really good track.
I like Downhill.
Yeah, and Massive to me is the one. That's a full Vogue down the house.
All right.
The beats are
now,
great.
where's your qualifier on this? Because it's building up to a qualifier.
Well, the qualifier is that you also could tell the lyrics. I feel like the lyrics are a little lazy. They're not great. Right. And, I think people need to really respect dance music. Dance music does not get the respect that it needs to get. Everybody thinks they can do it. Everybody thinks they can throw it. Anybody can create a beat. But there are nuances to dance music. There really are. When I was remixing tracks, and not just for Beyonce, I have a spectrum of people that I, A&R those tracks for and work with the producers on. There's certain things you have to think about more than just the beat. For me, say when I was putting together a package for any of the artists, I'm thinking about so many things, right? Especially when it came down to the house mixes, because I always had house mixes in our packages. House music is tribal. It's, as you know, it's an energy. It comes from within, and it's an expression and movement. So I'm thinking of how that track needs to begin, the build-up. What's that thing, the meat of it, and then where's the drama? Where's the moment that everybody can throw their hands up in the air?
I think that's what's missing.
Yes.
It's missing from this, and to be honest, we'll go into it. The Beyonce track too.
Well, I'm going to break that down on what I feel like.
But there's no. Look, I am not a big Drake fan. And I think he has been coasting on his Drake-ness. He is, by rap standards, reaching the end of his career at this point. I mean, he's going into... I just found this record, Damon Young, who is a very smart brother who writes under this, called it cleaning house music. There's no energy to this. If you're gonna do an album with beats that are nothing but soulful, spiritual, uplifting, affirmative, sexy, everything, energy, you can't just be like, oh yeah, girl, you left me, I'm so sad. It's the same kind of whiny. He comes off whiny, number one, which is his problem anyway. But it's just, like you, I admire him kind of going. It is a summer record, but what's the point of a dance record if you can't dance to it? If you can't get into it? And so that's my problem with it. It just feels like...
I think Massive will be the one. That if
but
any
it
DJ's
just...
pulling anything out. Yeah, listen.
It feels
it's an
lazy.
It's an artist who does not do dance music. And I think people need to really understand how hard it is to do great dance music.
Right.
And how hard it is to really get that feeling right. You know, everybody just thinks that these
just
dance
get a dope
artists,
beat and that's it.
And that's not it.
Right.
Which brings us to You Won't Break My Soul by Beyonce. Now, for most people, they're so surprised they're not used to hearing her voice that way. But for me, for 4 albums, this is kind of how I'm used to hearing her voice because I put together remix packages and I worked with those producers. I A&R'd remixes, picked the producers, and really worked hard on how there would be moments in the song and moments on the dance floor because I always thought of it like I had mixes for everything. Right? I had the mixes for the person who they don't go to the clubs, but they put dance mixes on to work out. So I know it needs to have ebb and flows for you're doing your cardio, and I need you to feel like you're moving, you're doing it. It's there's a feeling that I'm trying to evoke from people. And what is missing from this song is the fact that the Dream produced it. So he is not a dance...
And Tricky Stewart.
He is not a dance producer. Right?
Yeah.
So you take the Robin S track, Show Me Love, which is a brilliant track. And here's it.
Yes.
And that's a perfect example of how to have a moment. Robin S. Show Me Love is my generation of being in clubs. Mm-hmm. So I know every reaction to that song, including now, when it's come into one of those songs that as soon as that big note comes at the beginning, everybody screams it and sings it. It's a communal... It's a communal dance floor moment.
Very much.
What is missing from the Beyonce track is, I think it would have benefited from a dance vocal producer. It's the cadence of the vocal.
Thank you. I thought it was just me.
I ran into a DJ friend last night who plays house music all over the United States. He plays deep house. That is his lane. And we were talking about it. And he was like, I want to like it. He said, but the vocal is so flat that he was like, I'm going to try to create my own remix so that I can create moments. And that's what's missing. Like, there needed to be, okay, like, I hear her voice over beats because that is what I did. So when I first heard it, I started thinking about, I was dissecting it almost, being like, okay, wait, right here, this needs to kind of take a beat and it needs to do something. I was out last night for the first time in weeks, and the song was played twice. And I expected everybody to jump up, start dancing, and have a full moment. And that didn't happen. And I was like, And then when the DJ played it again, I saw 5 or 6 people doing a little shimmy, but not the room. And I was like, this... Especially
for someone we've been waiting for.
Yes.
And you and I both said, she needed to come with we don't need to hear about her shitty marriage record. She needed to come with something. But yeah, it's the energy. And once again, all right, maybe it's time for someone to just fucking put a big Frida record out, because clearly she's the one who dominates the track, who has dominated every track she's on with Beyonce. It'd be nice if she got a co-write. Maybe that'll happen on this, but...
I believe she has a co-write.
She's not credited in the... It's not... And
yes, it is.
Frida.
Well, that's true. That part.
Yeah, so that would be nice, because Frida is... in many ways, the audience that's marginalized and by
Don't worry, her
mainstream.
bank account will make up for it because she's got
No. But
credit
I'm
on
saying it
this
would be
song.
nice for her to have a credit.
Well,
but,
let me.
I was going to say what my issue is always with Beyonce is technically you can't touch her, but there is a lack of connection and emotion for me with her. And I know that they're different singers, but I always think, what would Mary J. do with this track? What would name a kind of over a more emotive singer? And Beyonce just feels like to me that someone said to her, and it's a little too coincidental that two of the biggest artists are now coming out with 90s influenced dance music. It feels like someone said to her, it'd be great for the summer, do a dance track.
Well, I think
and it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel lived in. It doesn't feel lived in to me.
What it's missing, because the track is fine. It's fine.
The track is fine.
It's fine. But it needed a little more drama, and it needed vocal drama. Like, I have been so close to Beyonce singing, I could see her tonsils. She can really, really sing. And
yes.
it is missing the moment of the call to arms on the dance floor.
Yes.
That part when she's just going, everybody. That was the moment to go the fuck
It
off.
needs to be an anthem. She
Yes.
needs an anthem. And she needs to lose her control. The problem that's increasing with Beyonce is that there's a control about her. You can be a great singer and you can be a great artist and you can be a perfectionist, but still let the control down. It just feels constrained. And if there's one thing about dance music and house music, it is not constrained.
It's tribal.
It is not constrained. Yes, it's tribal.
Visceral. It's all of those things. It's why when you see people dance, the way they move their bodies,
they're moving. It's religious.
Yeah.
It's almost a religious. So that
it's a way to me. Yes, I don't hate it. I don't
hate it.
I think that remixes will help it club wise because the remix producers are dance producers and they will realize they will have the sensibility with the vocals to chop it up and give the song the drama that it needs. I mean, I just tell anybody, go back. If I had to point them to any of the remixes that we did in the past where you can kind of hear examples of vocal drama on a song that's kind of almost flat. Like The Best Thing I Never Had, the Andy Caldwell mix, and the Lars Barenroth mix is my favorite that I did. And it's a really smooth tropical house, but it's how to ride that kind of a
But you know what
beat.
the problem is? The problem is that the average person does not have the access to the inside thing. She has to make... The remixes are amazing, but I'm saying ultimately it has to be a song that hits and lives on its own.
Absolutely.
She's Beyonce, and the stakes are much higher for her. Can I shift a little bit and just talk briefly before we do have a guest? I totally dropped the ball on this. Excuse me. The writer, Chris Molanphy, is going to be joining us very shortly to talk about all things charts. He has the Hit Parade podcast and all things this Kate Bush phenomenon. We're going to go into that. But what do you think of the Nana Cherry, the versions? Honestly, it's another artist we love. It's another artist we love.
You know, it's a little too cool for school for me.
It's
a little too cool for school for me. And I wanted to love it, and I'm just like,
I wanted to love it.
This might be above my pay grade.
Yeah, I feel like I needed like another degree. Listen, there are parts of it I really love. I love the
Man-Child is the one thing that
Man-Child is the one with Sia. I like Sassy with Tyson. With Tyson, who's her daughter. Her selection of artists is spectacular. I do love the kind of statement putting Anahi, who is a trans woman, on woman. But I realized listening to this that part of what made all these songs, and they span her career, what made these songs great are the beats. And she took the beats away from that. She's someone who makes smart dance music.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And she took the beats out of songs that are very danceable. And I'm like...
Or just mood or the full
or
vibe.
Moving.
Like Woman,
yeah.
You know how I feel about the Man album. Nana Cherry's Man album
one of my favorite albums.
I love... And Woman, I love that song.
Love that song.
Love it. But I was just like, I love this.
It felt a little too pitchforky for me.
You know?
No disrespect to
yeah.
any part. But I just looked at it and went, this is going to be great. I love this singer. This, Sudaran Archives, interesting person.
What I do want to say to some of the people, like, to go back and if you make a playlist of this Beyonce song, it will fit in with some of her other work. Like, go back if you want to hear what I'm talking about, like with the feeling and emotion of it. Is go back and listen to the package of Blow remixes. Those really great. Go back, listen to the package of Partition remixes, in particular Tom Steffens, which is mind-blowing. Tracy Young's Pretty Hurts. Bobby Duran's I Was Here. I mean, she has a history of being a dance floor darling. And I do think it's early, and maybe when I was out the other night and they played it, because it's so new and people don't know the word. I also found that it was hard for people to sing along to. You know what I mean? Just the cadence of it. There's not that, the dance floor, perfect case. Ultranate, who was a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago. If you go through her catalog and you listen to her music, and she's not the screaming, wailing diva, as she said, but she knows how to ride that beat and give you the drama that you need, So it's great.
All right. I think our friend Chris Molanphy is here. Hey, yo, Chris, what's up? Chris is here.
We're so glad that you're here, Chris.
Yeah,
because
thank
you.
Courtney.
Listen, let me just tell you, as somebody who worked in the music industry for a long time, I felt like I understood how the charts work. But since I've retired and I've left, and streaming and YouTube and all of these things come into play, I don't know how the charts work anymore. It just seems like what
a little
counts
complicated
for what?
Now.
It's a lot complicated. So you do the Hit Parade podcast, and you have the Slate series, Why Is This Song No.1, which is a question many of us ask ourselves all the time. But we wanted to talk to you just because we wanted to talk to you, but we wanted to talk to you about the phenomenon of the summer, Kate Bush.
Yeah, it's amazing. And speaking of Why Is This Song No.1, it's not #1 in America yet, but I cheated, and I wrote about it for the Slate series.
Yeah, because it's sliding backwards in America. Yeah,
it slid backward one position.
It's running down that hill.
It is like eroding ever so slightly down that hill. Which honestly, to me, I'm looking at the glass as half full, more than half full, because I was already surprised in week 2 that it went up. That stunned me. In fact, when I wrote about it the week it debuted at #8, and I warned my readers, like, listen, guys, this is very exciting, but let's not get too excited. Right. These kind of 1 week phenomenons happen all the time. This thing could plummet next week. No, it goes from #8 to #4. And to hold in the top 5 is also really goddamn impressive, especially during what I call Song of Summer season.
Right.
So, like, it's competing against Harry Styles, that Lizzo banger, friggin' Jack Harlow with, his Fergie.
First Class and all that, yeah.
First Class. He's got, she's got serious competition, and she's holding her own in the middle of all these records. That's really, it's shocking, and in some ways it's almost unprecedented. And Courtney, you mentioned how the charts have evolved. I feel like I write a version of this story every few months. I wrote something like this when All I Want for Christmas Is You went to #1 in, Christmas of 2019. That's now 2.5 years ago. I wrote about it again when We Don't Talk About Bruno from Encanto went to #1 early this year. And I'm writing about it again, which is that basically the metrics we now have baked into this chart make it possible for us to track these phenomena in a way we really couldn't before. Like, to go to the Disney song for just a sec, like, it's possible that other sort of Disney ensemble songs dating back to Hi Ho and, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
I would like to see a Hi Ho remix. Work on that, Courtney.
Work on that. But like maybe in the, the turn of the 40s, if streaming had existed and the charts as we know them had existed, we'd register that Hi Ho was a #1 hit. But it's only now that we have streaming and TikTok. By the way, TikTok is not baked into the chart, but it has a knock-on effect on everything that is baked into the chart. and YouTube and radio and everything. Now we can track that a song like We Don't Talk About Bruno is this big. And so to turn back to Kate Bush, this is how we know that Running Up That Hill is this big. Like, to make an example from 15 years ago, when the Journey song Don't Stop Believin' was in the finale of The Sopranos, it made a big burst onto like the digital sales chart for a week. But like, it didn't come back to the Hot 100. And now, of course, we hear Don't Stop Believin' on oldies radio like every 10 minutes. Yeah. So, you know, these things have an impact, but usually it's a slower growing impact than this. This is like instantaneous. Like, it happened, you know, Stranger Things season 4 dropped Memorial Day weekend. By Sunday of that weekend, I was already getting people saying, you know, this song's #1 on iTunes. And I started waving it away like, well, that's impressive. But, you know, iTunes is the dollar download, which is like a dying medium, and it's not as big as it was 10 years ago.
Right.
Call me back when it does something on Spotify. Then Spotify a day later is like, this is our #2 record on all of Spotify. It's like, okay, wait, this is big. And then within a week, it's re-debuted on the charts at #8. So like, the way the charts work now have a lot to do with us understanding just how big this Kate Bush song is.
Well, let me just ask, because obviously all of us here are Kate Bush fans, and we're old enough to remember Kate Bush, you know, in her. And again, I will say this as a non-com person, boy, do we look stupid at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, we couldn't have known. I mean, unless we did know, and then
no, you could. I mean, do you think somebody knew? I can't. This was a big sink, but
I wonder.
I
have my Kennedy grassy knoll conspiracies about this, but
right.
But is it a tribute? How much of it is a tribute to the song itself? Let's just say, for example, if they had put Sledgehammer in there, or I don't know, any, you know, another song, how much of this is a tribute to the popularity of Stranger Things? Full disclosure, never watched it, or her? You know what I mean? Like, which is it? Or is it a little of both?
And you're asking the question right, and you're answering it right, which is yes, it's both in this sense. Okay, Stranger Things, which has now been on 4 seasons, about 6-7 years, I think it debuted in like 2016, has used period-specific 80s music before. On the first season, they very prominently featured the Clash's "Should I Stay or Should I Go?" At the end of the third season, they very prominently used Lamal's 84 synth pop classic, The Never Ending Story.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, no, that sweet synth pop song. And there was data in both cases that showed that, you know, digital consumption of each of these tracks went up, but not enough to come back to the Hot 100. And if you want me to get super technical for 10 seconds,
please do.
Billboard rules state, this is now about a 10-year-old rule. They will allow an old song back onto the Hot 100, a song that's already had a complete chart run, if it generates enough points to make the top half of the chart, meaning the top 50. So if a song like, say, to pick another example, Baby Blue from the finale of Breaking Bad back in 2013, you know, that registered some digital sales and made a bit of a splash, but it didn't re-debut on the Hot 100 because it was big enough, but not that big. And the two other examples I just pointed out from Stranger Things, these are just in the last 4 or 5 years. They didn't come back to the Hot 100. So Kate Bush had enough juice not only to come back to the top 50, but to debut in the top 10. So some of this, yes, to answer your question, Amy, is about the song itself. And as I've been saying to people, including in the article I wrote for Slate, I think it has to do with the fact that Kate was so far ahead of her time. I can say this, I'm among friends. We all think she was ahead of her time, right?
Absolutely.
That she had the sound of what is now center of the bullseye Gen Z pop figured out 40 fucking years ago. Like, you drop Running Up That Hill into a mix next to The Weeknd, Billie Eilish, that Glass Animals song that was #1 3 months ago.
Harry Styles.
It all sounds like it fits. People, like, I've gotten so many stories, people tweeting at me, friends telling me, my daughter, my son has this on their mix, and they just think it's a cool new song by a cool new artist because Kate Bush was that far ahead of her time. She was programming the Fairlight by herself in the early 80s when only she and Peter Gabriel knew how to use that thing. You know what I mean?
And the interesting thing about that is people don't realize that Running Up That Hill and Hounds of Love was a very pivotal time for Kate. She was almost going to be dropped from the label. The 2 albums before that underperformed. And, you know, she was making weird art rock that people just did not all the way get. And there was a lot riding on running up that hill when she decided to produce this album herself, this song herself, and it comes and she has the huge hit overseas. I always thought that in America that song had charted higher. I had no idea that in its
Number
original
30.
run,
Number
she
30
only
in
got
85.
to 30. Because I was in college, and that was college. Kate Bush
That was college
radio staple, right? And
Yeah,
that
totally.
song and that album was just. We played it so much.
She also made a resurgent, I remember, like post-punk stuff. I mean, she's always kind of popped up. You know, once we
this woman's
discovered
work
Peter
was her
Gabriel,
next really resurgence because it was
Right.
on the She's Having a Baby soundtrack, and it was in that
Right.
movie, and that was
Right.
the first
When-
time people really heard that.
which was
And
a
then
very,
Maxwell covered it and turned
and
it
then
into an
Maxwell
R&B hit
covered
in
it,
the 90s.
and then Pat Benatar covers Wuthering Heights. I mean, she's always sort of been, and then of course the cosign she's gotten from rappers over the year, which she's always
Big
she's
Boy's
not-
fandom is
Right.
Yeah.
touching to me.
No,
on so
no.
many levels.
Let me tell you something. Big Boy, if you want to watch something that will affirm your belief in mankind as we know
Yes.
it, in a time when
Could
we
not
don't
agree
have
more.
a lot of belief with mankind, watch his tribute to her, where it's not just like he is singing and talking about what it meant to him, and I'm like, oh my God,
And he will
why
break
does
down
everyone always
lyrics
say?
and he's
Why
very
does everyone
specific
always say
about
Andre?
lyrics,
Why do we always say Andre's the interesting one in this group? I'm sorry, you're the
Seriously.
interesting one.
Because he was the one everybody wanted to fuck, really. That's what that was.
Yeah.
That's the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
and
guess.
They weren't paying attention to his friend. They were like, you're so hot. And meanwhile,
Right,
Big Boy
he's the
was
one who
doing
had a
his
baby
thing.
with Erica. Yeah, he's
you
the one
know?
who had the baby with Erica, and Big Boy was hanging out in strippers. And how did that work out for him? Much better than it did for Andre. But yeah, no, she's always been like, for me, she's somebody who, like, everybody thinks she's a cult artist, and she is. But goddamn, everybody knows who she is in a lot of ways. I mean, granted, we run in weird circles, but still. You don't have to really explain who she is to people. People know the name. I mean, am I wrong on that? Or
They do and they don't. And here, the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about is what I call her Britishness, right?
yes, now we have a beat. We have.
Now, in the UK, she opened in 1978 with a #1 hit, Wuthering
Yeah.
Heights, executive produced by David Gilmour. He plays guitar on it. And then she goes on to score multiple hits. Now, Courtney made the point that she starts to get weird in the early 80s. I think The Dreaming was her first British #1 album, which is a strange one because The Dreaming is a dark, weird, uncommercial record. That was like Momentum doing its thing. It's an example of what I call the AC/DC rule, where the album after the big one is the one that goes to #1. I think it was either Never Forever was the first #1 or The Dreaming, but by The Dreaming, she's actually even starting to alienate her British fan base. But in America, Wuthering Heights, a British #1 hit in 78, peaks at number 108. It bubbles under the Hot 100, doesn't even make the official chart, because that's I compare her to Roxy Music. The line on Roxy was that Roxy never had more hits because Roxy are like too artsy and British, and yeah, we get new wave, and yeah, we understand Duran Duran, but we don't get Roxy Music. Well, it turns out when we put Roxy Music on the Rock Hall ballot 3 years ago, they waltzed right in.
Boom, waltzed right in.
Now, why Kate Bush can't get in on three
Well,
tries? And I have
the-
voted for her all three times.
Me
She's
too,
been on that
me too.
ballot.
I voted for her all
theories on
three
that.
times.
I have theories on that. It's because Roxy, a lot of the people who vote and love them are like, I saw them when they played the Forum. I saw them when they played the Garden. I saw them. Kate Bush has never performed in the United States.
That's a good point.
She did
Lack
that
of live
tour. Her
performance. That's a
tour
good
was
point.
the tour was at the Odeon in London in '79. And then when she came back and did what was it called? The
dates at Royal Albert.
Before the
Right.
Dawn,
Right.
and that was in 2013. She has not done a tour here. So, yes, people love her, but they'll love her on record. Nobody could be like, oh my God, I saw that
I
tour.
saw Kate
She was
Bush in
amazing."
concert. And
So
also-
it's a rarefied group of people who've seen Kate Bush in concert.
Right.
So I
And
think when
also-
it came time for
sorry.
voting, all of those people, nobody could come and say, oh my God, that showed up this. Roxy has been Roxy's about to go back out on the road again. You know what I mean? So they were more accessible than Kate.
Well, and also Brian Ferry. I mean, I'm a huge Roxy Music fan. I'm one of
Ditto.
those. I'm one of those like, oh yeah, Avalon was great, but their early stuff was better. But I'm a huge fan. Brian, they don't play a lot, to be fair, but Avalon is one of those records that everybody sort of knows. It was another college rock, adult contemporary kind of record. But Brian Ferry is also somebody who is unbelievably well liked. I mean, I have
Yes.
never heard anybody say anything negative about the guy. So he's somebody who's super friendly and super nice. Sadly, did not want to marry me when he met me, but that's a whole nother. I'm over that, Chris. I'm over that.
A girl can dream.
A girl can dream. A girl can dream, and a girl in every dream home, though, a heartache.
So is it also is it that people don't know Kate personally too because she's been
yes,
very
I think
private?
that's a lot of it. They have no connection.
She's
with
an
her.
enigma to people. It's like
No.
she shows up when she has a record
She
and then
shows up
disappears again to wherever she goes.
Well, she's more anomalous to Sade in some ways in that sense, except that Sade had hits. And Sade had hits and presence, more presence in this country. Yeah, Kate Bush.
And Sade toured.
Sade toured. Most people I've never heard her speak, Kate Bush. I mean, there is this sense. I mean, the Britishness, I understand because the British do enjoy people who read William Blake growing up and twirl around a lot and,
Right.
Which is why Florence Welch and Florence and the Machines being as popular here is kind of strange because she does a lot of twirling and doesn't wear shoes and she's very...
Yeah, it's weird. Florence in
Bushy.
interviews denies that she ever got anything from Kate Bush, but I see massive
Right,
Kate
it's
Bush
like,
influence.
it's like, lady.
I'm like, girl, you exist in a world that Kate Bush
Yes.
made possible.
It's
Come
You
on.
are a Kate Bush, Stevie Nicks fever dream, all right?
I can't
Give me a
stand when the
fucking
kids try
break.
that bullshit.
Right.
Like, no.
Oh my
It's
God.
like, girl.
She gets offended in interviews when people bring up the Kate Bush thing, and I'm
Oh,
like, really?
come on.
Really?
Oh, come on. I mean, yeah,
But to-
that's like Radiohead, like, oh, the Bends, like that was a sellout, or your best album. I mean, you can, frame it either way.
Right. But to Courtney's point about, like, the Americans who liked, Kate Bush in the mid-'80s and the fact that she was alternative. First of all, there was no Billboard modern rock or alternative rock chart in 1982, 85. They didn't start that until 88. By the way, she had a #1 hit with Love and Anger on that chart in 1989. So, like, the college rock thing eventually
Caught up.
registered on the charts.
Yeah.
But when she was at that peak, either in the late 70s or, like you say, when she went through the weird period and then came out with Hounds of Love, which is just a banger start to finish, there were not the metrics to sort of measure her popularity. And also, remember that 82 to 85 is peak New Romantic, peak Second British Invasion. In theory, this should have been a good time for Kate, but I've always thought of her as the alternative to the alternative. She's not Culture
Right.
Club. She's not Kaja Gugu. She's not Duran Duran.
And she's a woman.
She's a woman. That's true. Let's just
And
say.
her videos-
I mean,
her
Annie
videos
Lennox was a
were-
woman and made it work, but
Yeah, but Annie Lennox was a woman standing next to a man, number
Yes,
one.
good
Annie
point.
Lennox played with gender in a way that was sexy. Kate Bush is, I mean...
The music was more
you just
commercial
don't
for
sit down.
Eurythmics.
What?
The music
I'm
was
sorry.
more commercial with Eurythmics.
Yes,
It was
yes,
an
it was.
easier, it
Agreed.
was an easier pill for people
It
to
was
swallow.
an easier. It was. And to get back to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stuff, I mean, we can't, two girls in the same year who are British,
Yeah. No,
that
good
might have
point.
been the
And look,
thinking as
I
well.
love Eurythmics. I really do, but it was an easy call for me. I gave my vote to Kate. I did not give
Who
my
did
vote
you
to
vote for
Eurythmics.
this year? I'm just curious.
My 5 were Duran Duran, Kate Bush, Tribe Called Quest, Dionne Warwick, killing me that she's not getting in, and who am I forgetting? And Pat Benatar. That was my 5.
All right, I was Pat, Eurythmics. I went pretty much all girl. Pat, Eurythmics, Tribe, the Dolls, because I'm just contractually obligated to do that. And like I told you, I was going to go Judas Priest because I don't care about them, but they're so worthy. And at the last minute,
They're worthy.
I gotta
They're
go.
totally
I gotta
worthy.
go, Kate. I gotta go, Kate. I gotta.
So, Amy, you've been on Who Cares About the Rock Hall, that podcast, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
so
and they
have
have
I.
been on our show. They've been on our show.
Yes, and they advocated for Tribe, they advocated for Dionne hard. And they did not advocate for Kate, but they were the ones when I came on to talk about my vote were like, okay, if you want to do that. They didn't dissuade me. They said, look, Chris, it means a lot to you. You should vote for Kate Bush. But they're like, it's snowball's chance in hell.
They're like, she's not getting
and
it.
they were right. And they were right,
Well, we don't know if it's a
do you
snowball's
think that
chance in
changes
hell.
if she's on the ballot next year? Because now all of a sudden...
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is what I actually really want to ask you, Chris, because you're paying attention to the charts. Are we seeing
Sure.
resurgence of any of her other songs, any of the popular singles or albums moving up through any of these streaming charts right now?
My understanding is that it's not enough to touch the Hot 100, obviously, but that consumption of Hounds of Love as an album has shot way up. The album, and by the way, here's yet another thing that has changed about the album chart. Streaming, when you stream individual tracks, that counts in aggregate for the album chart. So Hounds of Love is yes, that's been true since 2015, late 2014. Okay. And so what that means is that Hounds of Love is back in the album chart top 20, which means kids aren't just streaming Running Up That Hill. They're streaming Cloud Busting. They're streaming Hounds of Love. Wow. They're streaming the rest of that album. So there's no one track that's aggregating all the attention that Running Up That Hill is, but the album is definitely being consumed. And I would love it if, more of her stuff started popping up on charts. That would be amazing.
Here for, I want a Babushka and a Wow return.
Babushka, oh my God, Babushka would make me so happy.
Oh my God, that would be.
That video?
It is the best shit on the planet.
But what's funny?
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen it. There's that music teacher out in Staten Island who has his kids, the elementary school sing. And they did Running Up That Hill, and that sort of had a moment too. And it was absolutely gorgeous to see these kids like emoting, so there is something about that song that does really, really touch people. But so where's it at chart wise now? Number 8 US
5
or number
5 US? 5 US, which is really quite good. I mean,
and in the running for 2 weeks at number 1 in the UK, it looks like if it holds, she'll have a second week at number 1 there.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's already set the record as the oldest artist. I don't think just the oldest woman. I think, no, it's definitely oldest woman. She beat Cher.
Yeah. She beat Cher. Before it was Cher with Believe. Cher was 52 with Believe.
Right, and at 63, she now is the oldest woman ever to top the British charts. I'm not sure if it's oldest artist, but it's definitely oldest
as
woman.
a 63-year-old white woman who's been known to twirl, that makes me happy. That makes me very happy.
Solidarity, right?
She's probably making more money.
Kate happy.
Yeah, she's probably making more money now.
Well,
right?
No, Courtney makes a good point. Let's also say, Kate is very, very reclusive and very wary of giving the rights to her songs for syncs. She doesn't do it very often. She happens to be a fan of Stranger Things. And what's been most delightful is that ever since this started blowing up, she's kind of gobsmacked too, and she's been releasing little press releases and thanking the producers of Stranger Things.
She's like, I can't believe. She's like, I am thrilled. I cannot believe it. And I love that.
She's not acting too cool for the room about this. She's genuinely excited.
Well, that's really nice, though.
And to be,
it's beautiful.
Think every artist wants to feel appreciated. And I think for her, seeing a new generation discovering her, and I have hope that since everybody walks around with a computer in their pocket, that they'll dive deeper because there's so many albums. Listen to the Red Shoes. You know what? Just go through and listen to her albums, and you'll realize, Essential World, there's beautiful, beautiful
Go do
work
your TikTok imitating the dancing in the Wuthering Heights video. Because, Flash Mobs have already done it. You can do it, too.
Isn't there a Kate Bush Day every year where they all do Wuthering Heights?
There's a Kate Bush Day where they all get together and, it's me, I'm Kat, and they're flailing the arms around in, balloon sleeves.
I know, it's wonderful. It's sort of like Renaissance Fair meets the good part of Handmaid's Tale, if there is a good part of Handmaid's Tale.
Right.
I don't know. Is there a good... So we wanted to talk, because we spent the first half of this talking about these two underground, really obscure artists, Drake and Beyonce, and their new
I've heard
songs.
of them, yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of struggling. I mean, they're kind of trying to make...
We want to give them a leg up.
We like to advocate for the unsung and the unheralded on this
They're
show.
struggling like that Adele residency that is never going to happen.
Never going to happen.
It's never going to happen.
That's a struggle right there, yeah.
Yeah, Brian Ferry will I will be Amy Ferry by the next time you meet me, more than an Adele record. Or a third single on Adele. Let's just even make it easy like that.
I forgot that she even put an album out.
Had an album. I too. I actually have forgotten
that she put it out. I was like, oh yeah, that did come out.
That's right. She did come out. All right. So we, full disclosure, neither Courtney and I are doing the happy money dance about either one of them. But just curious what you think about the Beyonce single and the Drake album.
they will both, okay, the Drake album is a lock for number one. That's an easy call. There's no suspense about that. He goes to number one, whatever he puts out. Even when he put out things like More Life, which was not called an album, but a playlist. Or when he put out If You're Not Reading This, It's Too Late, which was called a mixtape. They all debut at number one on the album chart. This will debut at number one on the album chart. There's no suspense there. The only open question for me is when he dropped Certified Lover Boy last year, he tied a storied Beatles record when he locked down the entire top five with all of the tracks on the album.
That won't be happening this time.
That won't be happening.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if that happens this time. I'll be curious to see how many of his tracks debut high on the Hot 100. Now, Beyonce, okay, one of the interesting things about the Beyonce release, whatever you think of it, she is doing the opposite of what she pioneered in 2013, the surprise drop. She kind of created the surprise drop, and now she's kind of over the surprise drop. And there's an interesting article at Billboard sort of speculating why she's doing a very traditional, almost Adele-like drop of this. Like, here's the first single, then there'll be a video, then on such and such date I will release the album, and here's a pre-order code. Like, it's very old school.
Right. Well, listen, fun fact, I used to work with her, and I worked on that 2013 album situation and that night. And I think for her, doing it 2 albums in a row, I think she knew she couldn't do it 3 albums in a row. It's like you have to get...
Technically, I think it was 4 albums in a row because she also did it for those soundtracks.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that she started to realize that going back to getting the fans excited also helps. Let people talk about it. And that worked, right? Just her announcing the record. I mean, I'm watching every news program and they're like, Beyonce has announced her album. So that you get that extra added publicity. If you're not going to go out and be in front of people and talk about it, give them something to talk about.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, and so she's always savvy about these things. Her team Beyonce is always savvy about these things. And I think they realize that they're putting all their firepower into the single. Meaning drop the single, let that get all of the data, all the consumption, and let's see if we can go for a top 10 or even a number 1 debut.
Right.
Beyonce has not had, little trivia fact, has not had a solo number 1 single since Single Ladies back in 2008,
I
2009.
have had this conversation with many people.
The Ed Sheeran duet is the only other number 1 hit she has had in the last 12 years. People think...
and the Megan Thee Stallion, when she jumped on Savage... That was number 2, and it went to number 1 pop.
And it went to number 1, correct. So only duets have gone to number 1 for her.
Pop has not been very supportive of Beyonce as far as the way you would almost think. You know, I Am Sasha Fierce, we had several hits on pop.
And that album went deep. Like, think about Halo and...
Remember, it was 2 singles at a time.
If I Were
Diva
got played late in the run. Like, there were singles still spinning off that album a year later.
I had like 6 number 1 dance singles from that. There were so many singles. And then when we came with 4... Pop
4 is the breaking point.
Yeah.
Yes.
4,
Love on Top should have been a hit, and Love on Top did nothing at pop radio.
Countdown should have been a hit. You know,
Countdown should have been a number 1 hit.
Should have been
brilliant single.
And then we get to the 2013 album, which, okay, here's the first surprise drop. We're in the office. It drops. We're watching the world wake up. And pop radio does not get... First of all, that album was number 1 for 3 weeks. It's a huge record. The world loves this record. She did not have a number 1 pop song from that. And when they
Drunken Love only got to number 2 based largely on sales. It was a top 10 airplay record, but barely, and mostly due to R&B radio.
And when they had XO working at pop, it kind of stalled, I want to say, in the top 20 someplace.
Yeah,
and then John Mayer, 5 minutes later, does a version of XO, and they're on the same label, and his is almost about to pass hers. And I'm just kind of like, what is happening with Beyonce and pop? Why isn't pop supporting her the way I feel like she should be supported at that genre?
I think she has to be.
Weird.
And I also, I do think, and not to, I mean, she's obviously a huge superstar, but I think she has to start making herself more accessible, too. Not necessarily... we've talked about, there is a veneer around her. She's a lovely person, from what I understand from talking to Courtney, but there is been a sort of bird in a gilded cage thing about her, and I think she needs to start showing us some of who she is, and I think people do relate to that in some sense. And maybe, but she is getting old for the pop charts, though. She's getting old for all charts. It's an awful thing to say, but
I mean, they stopped playing her before she was getting to that age where pop won't really touch you. You know what I mean?
I mean, the before and after moment for me, speaking of four, was Run the World Girls, which was launched on an award show. It was the lead single. There was a video, and then it like sputtered out at like something like number 38. I think that spooked everybody. And you see Beyonce decide after that, I'm going to go for art. I'm not going to go for charts on this. Like my album will be number one, but I am not trying to score traditional radio hits anymore. Think of Formation. Formation, one of the greatest singles of the 10s, barely cracked the top 10 because it's like, look, I've got the Super Bowl, I've got the video, one of the greatest videos of all time. Like I don't need this to be a number one record. Is basically the conclusion it seems Beyonce came to after Run the World Girls, bricked on the chart.
I was yelling and screaming about Run the World. Run the World would have been successful had it come at a different time. I always felt that as someone who was in the clubs and working in that world, Pawn the Floor by, Diplo and those guys was such a huge club record. I mean, it turned the club out for a year straight. Right. I mean, they danced down to the ground. Right as that record died, Diplo produces Run the World for Beyonce. Here the song comes, but the track is not changed enough. So this song has been burnt out to the ground. So yes, you're Beyonce, you come with this huge video. I think it's one of her best videos. It is an amazing, amazing video, yet you have a song that has a track that has been burnt into the ground. There's no place for it to go. Like, even with the DJs, it's like, we love Beyonce, but we have played this song. Everybody has danced to this beat
every which
for
way
a
but
year.
loose.
So now here it comes again. Even with you singing on top of it, it's not changed enough. So there was no place for it to really go. I always felt like if it had come at a different time, that song would have been a hit.
Chris, let me ask you, because we all hate the song of the summer thing, but can you kind of, once we start having summer in the East Coast, song of the summer, can you think of anything?
We had it, and then it went back.
And then it went back.
In the 60s, and I don't get it, but whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's prohibitively Harry Styles' To Lose, because As It Was has been number one since Memorial Day and before.
It's like the best song ever. I'm sorry. It's the best.
It's good.
I heard it, I had it memorized.
It's the first song of summer that has deserved it in at least a couple of years, and I'm pleased with it. It feels like a classic breezy song of summer. It feels like, he scored with Watermelon Sugar 2 summers ago, but that didn't go to number one until August, and it was a very slow grower. Whereas this one, it was timed perfectly. The album dropped when it dropped. Like, everything lined up just right. He had
a clear lane. He had a clear lane.
Totally clear lane.
There's nobody in his nobody doing what he's doing.
It was just like, go.
Yeah.
No, and he's making the most of his moment.
Yeah. And again, not somebody who comes off like a dick. I mean, that's helpful. Right. And now that Justin Bieber, for bad reasons, is sort of out of the mix for a while. I mean, this is, what other like cute boy thing is going on right now. And BTS is taking a break, which I know Courtney is drinking heavily because of that. I can't
even name a BTS song.
Nobody can.
I don't understand what that is.
By the way, a shocker for me on the new chart, the new BTS song debuts at number 13. That's low for them.
That is low for them.
I was surprised that did not even debut in the.
Well, that's how many members there are in the group, right?
I think they've been cranking. That's the problem, though, when you're going that much and you're just cranking them out. The quality after a while starts to go down. I don't think the new song is great. And, that break might be really...
I like it fine, but...
It might be really needed. When you're in that kind of a boy band that cranks out album after album and tour after tour after tour, you don't even have time to write something and be creative. You're just trying to get something to fulfill. We need a track for this anthology. Right. And it's not even time to live experiences to be able to write something great.
So and they're in their NSYNC in 2002 moment. It's like you had a great run, you earned it.
One of them is going to come out as gay. soon?
That would be fun. Why not?
Why
That would
not?
be awesome.
Why not?
I'd be down
It's
with
very
that.
on trend. It's very on trend. Or non-binary. That's really more on
Non-binary,
trend. But that's a whole.
that would be
That's
the
a
move.
whole non-binary, queer, femme, gender. That's a whole nother conversation. We can bring you on for that. I know you have to go because you have to do something almost as fun as being on our show, which is to go have a root canal. So
Not a root canal, just a dentist visit. But yes, unfortunately.
Oh, you're good. You actually go to the dentist when you don't need to go? Oh.
Yeah.
Very, very smart of you, Chris. Thank you so much for doing this.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.
Seriously, this was so much fun. I love listening to your show, and it's a pleasure to be on it.
All right,
yeah,
and so
thank
you can find Chris, well, in his home, obviously, Hit Parade Podcast, and he has the Slate series, Why Is This Song No.1? And all of his brilliant writing is at Molanphy.com, MOLANPHY.com. We'll put all this stuff on our website.
Thank you.
Courtney, take us out with your beautiful... Courtney does the best outros in the history of mankind.
Thank you, everybody. We're so glad that you listened to us on I'ma Let You Finish. And you can follow us everywhere on Twitter at FinishIma. We still fucking hate that word. And on Instagram at I'ma Let You Finish NY. Facebook at I'ma Let You Finish, all one word for all of you old people like us, because I know everybody young who listens to the show is like, what's a Facebook? And on Pantheon Podcast Network, where there are over 70 amazing music shows. Hey, Peter. Hey, Christian. Hey, guys. And come back and see us here next week. Remember, leave a rating, tell a friend, pass it on, post us, love us, whatever you do. Just don't make a house music album and bring it to us next week.
Please don't make a house music record.
We're done.
Yeah.
Unless
We're
you
done
make
with
house music, we're done. We need the house artists to make house music. We love
Exactly.
you and see you next week.
All right, bye. Bye, Chris.
Bye.
It's NFL draft season, and that means it's time to start thinking about fantasy football. FantasyPoints.com features industry-leading experts and prognosticators using proprietary hand-charted data to help you score more fantasy points. FantasyPoints.com is the place to go for whatever kind of fantasy football you play. Whether you play fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, or do a little bit of everything, Fantasy Points has the meticulously researched content to guide you to victory. And why wait for the fall? Fantasy Points also covers the new spring football league, the UFL. Join the guru, John Hansen, Scott Barrett, Joe Dolan, and other massive names in the fantasy football universe with an exclusive offer. Use code Pantheon for 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including the all-in package, with access to every article, tool, and data nugget that Fantasy Points has to offer. That's FantasyPoints.com and code Pantheon for 15% off at Fantasy Points. FantasyPoints.com, code Pantheon. Score more fantasy points.